And just a reminder, everyone, we are recording today. Since it's at the top of the hour and I have a lot to cover, I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is Denise Liebetrau. I am the founder and CEO of Prosper Consulting, and today we're going to talk about the 3 ways to conquer your fear of career change. I am presenting this topic because this is typically what I end up talking to a lot of my clients about, is their fear about changing careers and taking that big leap, or what feels like a big leap. For those of you who maybe don't want to be recorded, you probably shouldn't be on today, because we are going to record. I record so that I can send this out afterwards to those of you who attended, and to those who registered and who were unable to attend. So this is just a disclosure on that. So as I said, my name is Denise. I do HR and compensation consulting work for employers. I'm also a coach to those of you who are high achievers who want to get paid what you're worth and have careers aligned to your values. And then I'm also a speaker. Today, we're going to talk about career change fears. We're going to talk about fear. Is it really a bad thing, or can it be something positive? We'll also talk about the types of career change that I have seen in my practice, as well as defining your fears. We'll do a deep dive into that type of a practice, as well as how do you face them and how do you manage them. I have a friend of mine, Todd Dolshall, who is monitoring the chat room, and you are all on mute. So if you have questions or you want to kind of stop me as we're talking, happy to do that. Throughout the conversation today, I will also stop and ask for feedback. And so for those of you who are wanting to participate, please make sure you have your chat open so that you can see the questions. And Todd, I will call on you to help me monitor the chat room and bring forward those questions and feedback and participation from everyone. With that, what I would love to start with is, what are your career change fears? I know what I typically hear from my clients, but I'm very interested in hearing from all of you. So I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and let you guys type in your career change fears in the chat room. And then Todd, I'll ask you to share those with me.
So we have our first one here. Just to keep this anonymous, we had a person ask for financial uncertainty of future.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I have a lot of people talk to me about. And that's one of the reasons why I also invited Todd here to join me. I have worked in HR for 25 years and have been on the side of the fence where I've helped design pay programs. And I also, as a career coach, help people negotiate and get paid what they're worth. There's this myth often that you have to go down in pay if you're going to kind of start over in your career. Most of us have got amazing skills and experience that can be transferable to other careers. It's how you tell that story and how you sell yourself to future employers that matters. I do believe in a financial checkup. And so part of that is looking at your assets, looking at where you're invested and making sure things are appropriate. And it's also, it's not just what you earn and spend and save, but obviously the investments. And Todd, would you please introduce yourself and share with everyone what your background is?
Well, thank you, Denise. I'm excited to be on a part of this call, and this is the second one that Denise and I have done together. So my name is Todd Dolshall. I'm a financial advisor and very involved in the human resources area, where Denise and I volunteer and partner together a lot. I serve on the state board of Colorado SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, as membership, and the treasurer for the Boulder Area Human Resource Association. And personally, why I love volunteering there, as well as picking Denise's brain, is that they've got an excellent finger on the pulse of what's happening, whether it's changes with Equal Pay Act, which I know is keeping Denise very busy, and all the downfall of that, potentially, if you don't do this correctly with your finances. So welcome everybody, and as a part of this, you'll have an opportunity to connect with Denise and I one-on-one, obviously, so we can talk about what's next. I do see a number of comments flowing through, actually, which is great. So thank you so much for the participation here. So Denise, if you're ready, I'll just kind of rattle these off, and then we can incorporate this into your discussion today.
Awesome, go ahead.
So a great one here. Again, I'm going to keep all these comments anonymous for those who don't want to share. Comment 2 is, I fear that I'm too old to make a major career change. I'm going to be turning 60 here soon. The next one is not knowing what else you want to do career-wise, given this disruption. Next one is change in industry, specifically blue-collar, NPO organizations and into white-collar career space. So how do you shift from we're in a white-collar to blue-collar, so to speak? And then last is shift from being employed with a fixed salary and potentially benefits to being self-employed, which I know, Denise, you know that one.
I have
here and
traveled that journey. Yeah, I can certainly help with that. Anything else you're seeing?
That's all for now.
Okay. Well, we'll address those. I've written those down as Todd was sharing those with me. Here is what I typically hear from my clients. I can't afford to make a change, right? We get settled in and we like the paycheck or what we're earning, what we're doing today. And then to make that leap to do something different can be really scary. What if I'm terrible at it? No one will want to hire me because if someone hires someone my age. Age is something that often gets in the way in terms of our mindset when we make these types of changes. I can't leave something I know and I've worked so hard for. And sometimes I have people who are like, I have this status being in the profession that I'm in, and I just don't want to let that go. And then I have to start from scratch. And what if I regret it? What if I hate what I'm doing and I can't go back? So very common changes in terms of our career change fears are these, as well as the ones that Todd shared with me. Changing your career is a stressful event. I don't know how many of you know about the Holmes-Ross stress inventory. And this is, I will be happy to send this to you. For those of you who don't know, I always give a free gift to anybody who attends my webinars. And for those of you who may be watching this after and not attending live, happy to send this to you as a gift as well. The death of a spouse, divorce are the top two in terms of life events, in terms of having a major stress in your life. But I pulled from this list of 43 all the other things that were related to work, and certainly changing to a different line of work is something that is a pretty stressful event as well. The way the stress inventory works is you add up all your points as you go through the list, as you check them off, and then it tells you what the probability is of having a major health breakdown in the next few years after these kinds of things. So it's not something to take lightly when you do decide to change careers. When I decided to change my career, I've done that twice in my life, actually 3 times. It was not easy to do that, but I did some things before I changed my career those 3 times that were pretty powerful, and so I'll share those things with you today. So my question for you is fear a really bad thing? You can think about fear differently. You can think of fear as an ally. How many of you like to ride roller coasters, right? There is a level of fear and excitement when you are riding a roller coaster, right? Your heart amps up, you get excited, you go through loops, you're upside down, and it feels really scary. But there's also an excitement to it. So I would encourage you, as you think about your fears, to also remember those times when you've embraced fear. Another example of fear being exciting is for those of you who like horror movies, right? So sometimes we'll put ourselves in positions where we will actually embrace fear, and it's exciting, and you go to a horror movie and you walk out, or you go to a haunted house, and we put ourselves in those fear positions. Doing something that scares you every day is a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, and I do believe in that. The more you step in and label your fears and address them and take action, even though you are afraid, the more you build your courage muscle, the more you recognize that sometimes fear isn't based in fact, it's based in your imagination and not really something that's true. So why change your career? That's always the question I ask people. And sometimes it's about, I just can't do it anymore. The work I used to do, maybe it's something that's very physical. And as you've gotten older, your hands or your body isn't quite as able to do it. Sometimes it's that that career has gone away. As we talk about and look forward to the use of technology like artificial intelligence and things like that, there are a lot of careers that are going to go away, but then there are going to be new ones that are created. So Why change? Many times these are the things that come up when I talk to clients. Sometimes it's about their health, right? I'm working too many hours. I can't do it anymore. It's physically and it's mentally exhausting. I just can't show up to work every day and sit in my car and be sad before I walk into the office or cry as I'm driving home at night at the end of my work shift. Sometimes it's the fact that they aren't making as much money as they'd like to make, and they want to do a career shift and get into something that earns them more money. And sometimes it's the fact that what they're doing is actually causing problems in their relationships, that they need to improve their relationships, and they've decided they want to make a career change because of that. There is a practice that I do in my business where I work with people to describe their ideal day. And if anybody wants that exercise, you'll have access to me. I'll send you guys an email after today's call. And I can send you this exercise. It's a pretty powerful exercise to put yourself in the position of dreaming about what you'd like to have. Changing careers requires you to have a vision and create a vision for your future that is so powerful that you do the hard stuff and get through your fears in order to make that happen. So describing your ideal day, again, is an exercise that can be an incredibly powerful gift to yourself. When I did this exercise before I started my business, I found myself crying because I realized how much I was miserable in the current work that I was doing. It wasn't that I didn't like the work, and it wasn't that I didn't like the people, but the hours I was spending and the environment I was in wasn't really aligned to my values, and I couldn't live that way anymore after I did this exercise. Now, it did take me a number of months to get myself out of the situation I was in, but it gave me the ability to hope for something better, and that was really powerful. And for those of you who are TED Talk junkies like me, many of you have probably seen Simon Sinek and this TED Talk. He talks about how companies who describe their why get to their how and get to their what after they describe their why. I am a firm believer in figuring out your why. Why do you want something? And making it a really big why and reconnecting to that often. So this is homework for those of you who are looking for something to do perhaps after this call to reinforce some of my ideas. I would encourage you to pay attention and watch Simon in this video so that you can understand this concept, and then spend a little time journaling and writing about your why. Why do you want to make the career change? What is it about the future that you envision for yourself that makes you want to take the hard steps to move forward? There are actually 9 types of career change. People often think that there's only a few, but I'm going to give you some examples here in the next few slides. The first one is pretty obvious, right? You get a promotion. So maybe you go from being a software developer to a manager of a group of software developers. And so it's a change in your responsibilities and you're climbing the ladder and going up. The other one is horizontal. So maybe you just get a new job at the same level within your current employer. So maybe you go from being an administrative assistant to a paralegal, or maybe you go from being in HR, maybe you go from doing talent acquisition work to being an HR business partner. There's lots of different ways to go horizontal. Again, those are kind of easier moves than some of the promotional things sometimes. A job redesign. And I have done this with some of my clients where they're like, I really like my employer, but I don't like what I'm doing today and I'm not feeling challenged. Can you help me, Denise, come up with a way to pitch me taking on new responsibilities within my current team or within my current company so that I can grow and develop and not walk away totally from my current employer. I have also done this where people are like, I'm in this part of the company, maybe I'm in IT and I need to shift and I want to move into another part of the company. You can also do that in this type of a career change. You can do an exploratory change, right? You could keep your day job, but try a new career. So starting a side gig as a freelance writer, teaching yoga classes on weekends if you're thinking about becoming certified in yoga and stepping into that as a profession. There are a lot of skill and boot camp kinds of organizations that are around these days, and there are some companies that are letting go of the idea, some very big name companies that are letting go of the idea of you having to have like a 4-year degree or something like that in order to come in and do specific work. So you can learn coding. So let's say you learn coding for apps and then you develop the one you've always needed. So sometimes these side gigs and these freelance opportunities are great ways to test out your capabilities and see if you could make a living doing something outside of what your day job is. I have one friend of mine who's really good at PowerPoints and creating those types of things, and she does freelance PowerPoint presentations. And I have a list of freelance websites if any of you need those and you want to try something in this space. I'm happy to send that to you, where you can become a freelancer and test out the market and see if you could sell your services in that type of a way. There's also strategic change, so taking a calculated step towards a future career goal. I was working with one person about a year ago who was a general counsel in an organization that was going through bankruptcy. And he had a boss who reported to the CEO, who, not the best boss in the world, I have to say. And we were strategizing about how does he manage that relationship? How does he, as an executive, also think about maybe he needs to move outside of that organization because they were going through bankruptcy. And so we ultimately, I helped him do both a career search as well as manage his internal relationships and help him potentially get a promotion. He ended up, his boss ended up leaving, and he ended up getting a promotion in his current employer, and we called off the job search, and I have not heard from him, so I assume he's happy. There are strategic changes you can make too. So let's say you want to be an executive at some point, or you want to be a CEO, or you want to be in the C-suite in some role. I know from being an HR person on the inside, when we did succession planning and talked about talent and where we were going to move people, how to help people make those strategic moves to build out the credibility, both in depth and breadth in your profession and broadly across businesses in order to make yourself a viable candidate for some of those more senior level positions. But I've also done it for people who are like, you know what, I just want to be a director. I just want to be a director over, say, the marketing function. And I'm doing social media work right now. And I know I need to expand and broaden my perspective in terms of marketing. I'm working for a small firm. I know I need big firm experience, and I've helped people do career planning in that way as well. And sometimes you do take uncalculated risk. Sometimes there are career changes that you don't expect, right? So maybe you have been self-employed and the bottom has dropped out in terms of the market that you were serving, and now you're in the state of needing to figure out your what's next. Or maybe you have been laid off and you've always been thinking about changing careers. And now that you're laid off and you've had time to think a little bit more, you've decided, you know what, I'm going to make that leap. And so sometimes there are things that are really disorderly and emotional, and you don't get to do all the sequential steps to make it feel really great, but you can still step into that space of controlling what you can control, and taking steps to head towards something better. You can do a second career. These are often things that require significant commitments to education or a change in lifestyle. You could be an attorney today, and maybe in the next few years you want to become a teacher. There are programs that help people do shifts like that in the world. So if you're thinking about something along those lines, I'm happy to share resources and ideas in that way. This was one of the reasons why I shifted from working in a corporate world to working for myself, although I was up till midnight creating this presentation deck last night, so I'm not sure that I've always cut back on hours and reduced my stress, but reducing stress and changing things so that you can have a better work-life balance is important. You can be an IT manager, for instance, and then maybe you decide, you know what, I'm just going to be a software developer and I can work from home, and I'm going to put myself out there and do contract work. More and more of the workforce is moving toward gig or freelance work, and certainly through this COVID crisis that we're in the middle of, I've seen a number of employers shut down racks and not have job openings, but they are willing to get work done through contractors. So if you've got a skill set that lends itself to that, now is a good time to kind of put yourself out there and market yourself to those potential folks who might need your help. And then obviously entrepreneurship is another one where you might start a business, and it can feel like there's a considerable risk. but you have to have a really strong motivation to define what you want in your life and in your business. And there are also some things that you can do to kind of ramp up your learning curve if you're stepping from the corporate world into entrepreneurship. And again, for all of you who have not met with me in the past, I offer free 15-minute strategy calls. So I'll give you guys the link so you can get on my calendar at the end of our presentation today, so that you can get that, put that on your calendar if you want to spend some time with me. Todd, I'm going to open it up to you. Is there any comments or questions as it relates to these types of career changes as I was talking?
Nothing new, but one that really stuck out to me that's a biggie is the last one I mentioned, which was switching from an in-house position with benefits and salary to self-employed. So
yeah,
that was a big one. I see that's on your slide right now.
Yeah, that is a big one. So when I was considering this, I started doing some things freelance before I left the corporate world. I was lucky in that I had a 6-month notice that my job was ending and I was being laid off. And so I built a website and I started talking to people and started thinking about my marketing. I also invested in some mastermind courses that taught me how to run a small business. And certainly the uncertainty in terms of pay and benefits is there. I went out to the Health Connect and the Colorado market to figure out what kind of health insurance was out there and what can I afford to pay for and how would that work for me and my family. I also talked to somebody like Todd, who is a financial advisor, and looked at my investments and looked at things like that and made sure that I spent some time paying down some of my debt before I started my business. So there are certainly steps that you can take to get yourself there. I have often worked with people who are toward the end of their careers in their 40s and 50s in terms of being in the corporate world. And they're like, you know, I'm getting at a certain age where I know it's going to be harder because there's ageism in terms of getting my next job. I would like to do entrepreneurship and start my own business because I think I'll have more control over my destiny. And so, you know, obviously we can talk about this. I'd have to know more about your specific experience, but we can certainly talk about what I have experienced personally. And if I have connections that might help you if you're thinking about making this kind of shift, I'm happy to make those kinds of introductions as well. Let's talk about facing your fears. There is a mindset that you need to have in order to be successful, I think, when you make these kinds of shifts. You can have a mindset of scarcity, or you can have a mindset of abundance. And I'm a firm believer that how you think about things is how is going to help you either stay motivated or not. I can remember thinking when I first started my business, there was a time period when I had big contracts with some major employers and things were coming in. And then when those things dropped off, I hadn't done enough business development work to have money coming in. And it was a big deal to me because then I realized, oh my gosh, I hadn't been spending my time correctly. And your time and attention is your most valuable resource, right? So I had to take a look at how I was spending time and block a couple days on my calendar to not do client work, but to do business development and marketing types of work. So it's a matter of thinking about how do you go from scarcity and, oh my gosh, there's no money coming in, to a level of abundance. I'll give you another example. When I talk to people, there are times when I'll talk to people and I'll think, oh, I'd love to have them as a client. But then they don't ask me to become their coach, right? And that's okay. I just think, you know what, that's okay. I had a good conversation with them. I gave and served them in the way that was most possible for me. But from an abundance perspective, I know I'll have somebody else that I'll be talking to within the next week, and I'll bet they'll hire me. And typically they do. So you have to kind of manage your mindset and not dwell on the things that didn't go your way, and instead focus on the things that do go well. There's also 2 practices that I do every day that are important. In the morning, when I'm brushing my teeth, I think about what I'm grateful for. And I try to think of 3 things that I'm grateful for, and they can be simple or they can be big. And then at night, when I'm brushing my teeth again, as I tie it to an event, is I think about what was I successful at? Did I have some great conversations today? Did I get some work accomplished that were big things that my clients needed? Did I create a presentation like the one I'm delivering right now? So I try to bookend my day with gratitude and then celebration of success. That helps me stay in a positive place, and it helps me continue to stay in that place of abundance. I'm a firm believer in the PDCA, or the Deming cycle, the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Some of you may have seen this before. I firmly believe in, you have to make a plan, and then you have to execute on the plan, and then you go, okay, how did it work? What went well? What didn't go well? And incorporate that feedback and act and go through the cycle again and again. So I'll give you an example. For those of you who are in that state of wanting to make a career change, first thing you need to do is think about you as a product, you Inc., and figure out from your education, your experience, your expertise, those things that you excel at, what is it that you have to offer, and then develop your value proposition or your story. Then you have to think about who will want that. What is the where in the world are the companies or the organizations or the individuals that will need those services or those things that you have to offer? And where can you put yourself where you'll perform at your best? And then you have to promote yourself, right? You have to develop a personal brand, a reputation. You have to develop all the written communications, your resume, your CV, your LinkedIn profile. And then you have to be visible through networking and through social media to be seen by the right people. And then you have to price yourself in the right way, right? And it's how you talk about your worth, knowing what you're worth in the marketplace. How do you leverage your soar stories or your accomplishment stories? And then getting really clear in terms of your negotiation tactics, and as well as the cash and non-cash rewards that you know you deserve. And depending on the place that you've chosen that you are targeting, how does that place align their rewards for your type of talent and type of expertise and results that you can help them achieve. So this is something that I spend a great deal of time on with my clients. If anybody's interested in digging in a little bit more on this, again, you've got 15 minutes with me to talk about it. There is a hidden job market that is really critical, especially if you're changing careers. Most jobs are never listed, but instead are filled internally or via networking. And so I will work with my clients a lot on networking. And to me, that's just making friends. So it's not about handcuffing yourself to somebody else, but it's about having good tactics and a strategy on how do you break into maybe a new industry or maybe a new profession. How do you get yourself known? How do they understand what you're passionate about and what you're good at? How do you put yourself in front of those influencers in that space so that they can make introductions for you so you can continue to broaden your network? This is incredibly critical in order to make career changes happen. And if you're wanting to stay within your company and just want to maybe shift to another department, or you want to grow your skills and take on some additional responsibilities, you still have to network and you still have to do some of these things internally. I am a firm believer that networking is important, to the point that I have a habit of connecting with 5 people every day, whether it's through phone calls and doing networking conversations that way. Now that we're, a lot of us are in quarantine or not being as open as meeting in person as we once were a few months ago. I also will connect with new people on LinkedIn, or if I find an article or something that reminds me of someone, I will send them a link to that. So I'm a firm believer in managing your network because it impacts your net worth. I also believe in managing your personal finance in a way where you're maximizing your income, you're monitoring your spending, and you're actively saving. But I also believe in touching base with people like Todd as it relates to investing. And I have an accountant and a tax advisor, and I have an attorney and somebody who helps me with estate planning, and I have a banker for my business as well as my personal finances. I have people that I turn to in terms of insurance, and for some people who are at the end of having maybe their business or wanting to turn their business over to others, there are business exit planners to talk to. And most of us also need to be worried about identity theft protection in a world where there are hackers and companies that don't necessarily protect our data. So if you need somebody like this from any of these specialties on your team of personal advisors, please let me know. I'm more than happy to make an introduction to folks who specialize in these things. And obviously I am, as an HR and compensation consultant, trying to work with clients, both employers as well as individuals, in terms of maximizing their income. So again, pay attention to this because you need a cadre of advisors in order to do well from a personal finance perspective. I am curious, do you know what two fears we are born with? Because there are only two things that as humans we are born with that we are afraid of. And then the rest of the things are things that we, our fears are things that come from our experiences or from illusions that we create in our head. And I'd love to open up the chat room and have people tell me if they know these two fears. Any guesses?
One is fear of predators.
Oh, that's a good one. That's not one of the two fears, but that's a good one. What else?
Fear of change, loss of ground, failure.
All learned fears. Here are the two that we're born with. Fear of falling, and this makes my heart pound just looking at it because I'm afraid of heights, and fear of loud noises. That's it. Those are the only two fears as human beings that we're born into the world with. So every other fear that we have is based on our own reaction to an experience in our lives and how we're still being held back by that fear. And fear is actually the foundation for most of our human actions. It's one of the reasons why we do anything at all. So there's fear and there's love, and those are typically the core things that motivate us to do something. Fears aren't actually real, they're illusions. And it's about how you think about them and how you respond to those fears once you define them that will create opportunities in your life. They're the mind's way also, I think, in our lives that tell us about things that we need to work on. So we aren't afraid of what's going to happen. We're often afraid of what has already happened. So let me give you an example. So I have a son who is worried about this COVID virus. He's 11. And when I talk to him about his fear of that virus and we dig into that, he's afraid. And I'm like, well, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid of getting sick. I said, are you worried about you getting sick? Well, no, Mom, I'm worried about you getting sick. Okay. Well, if I got sick, I'd go to the doctor and I'd get medicine and I'd take care of myself. And then as we dug deeper, it becomes more, he tells me, no, Mom, I'm afraid that you would die because Dad died. I'm a widow and I lost my husband in 2011. And so for him, he's afraid of something that happened before, but it's not what's really happening today. I'm not sick. The chances are I'm not going to pass away if you look at the statistics. And I know there are good doctors and good protocols out there. And so it's reassuring him that, you know what, the thing you're afraid of isn't happening right now. Fear and the need to control things causes a vicious cycle, right? The more you control you think you have, the more you are afraid of losing it. And the fear of losing it causes you to seek more control, and it becomes this vicious cycle. I am a firm believer in taking actions to control what you can and being smart about things. But there is a point at which you have to let go and recognize that you can't control everything. And if you really want something, you're going to have to step into your fear. Many times we also focus on what we'll lose and not what you'll gain. And the belief that there's also this belief that if you're just afraid enough that what you're afraid of won't happen and that your fear is somehow protecting you. We also make choices, better the devil you know than the one you don't. So you might be comfortable with the uncomfortable you know versus the uncomfortable you don't know, and the jumping into the new world that you think you're being called to do. And then there are many people, when I start working with them in this space, where they figure out they're not afraid of failure, they're more afraid of success. What if I say yes to that higher level job and I have more work to do and it tugs on me in terms of my commitments to my family or my commitments to some volunteer organizations that I'm involved in? And what if I'm really successful in that and I really love it? And then how's that going to change my relationships with my spouse? And how are other people going to treat me if I have this new title or whatever? So there are a lot of things that can bubble up. So let's talk about defining your fears. It was a watershed moment when I found this TED Talk by Tim Ferriss. Why you should define your fears instead of your goals. Truly, truly amazing in terms of the perspective it gave me and how it helped me face my fears. So again, I'm going to ask you to do this as a homework assignment. What Tim talks about is focusing on fear setting. And he also talks, if you watch Tim or follow him at all as a thought leader, he talks about stoicism, and it's an operating system for thriving in high stress environments and for making better decisions. So you train yourself to separate what you can control from what you can't, and then you let it go. And so this exercise, and I tend to do this a couple times a year, or when I feel stuck and like I'm not making progress on things because I'm not taking action out of fear, or I'm avoiding things, right? Because I'm afraid. This type of an exercise is really powerful. So whatever you fear, whatever is causing you anxiety, whatever's things you're putting off, what you do is you write down all the worst things you can imagine happening if you take that step that you're afraid to take. And then you write down what you can do to prevent those things from happening or decrease the likelihood of those things happening even a little. And then you put yourself in that repair place of what if the worst case scenario happens? What could you do to repair the damage even a little bit? Or who could you ask for help? Has anyone ever figured this out before you? And could you tap into their knowledge and their wisdom in order to make the repair? And then you start thinking about what are the benefits of an attempt or a partial success. And you write those types of things down. How might you develop other skills? How might you develop confidence? And then this is the most important thing, because you can talk about your fears, how describe them, all the way get through the repair step and worst case scenario. But what if you don't take action? What if you don't make this decision? What's your life going to look like in 6 months, 12 months, 3 years? Anything beyond that seems kind of intangible. And you have to get really detailed. Like, what are the emotional, physical, financial, spiritual costs if you don't take action? And then you put your fears under a microscope. I can't tell you how much this has helped me personally, both personally and professionally, by doing fear setting and just sitting down and writing this exercise. And I can tell you the leaps that I make in just a short amount of time by facing my fears by doing this are incredible. It is a profound activity and a profound action and practice you can make. And here's the worksheet I use for that. Hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life is a good quote, right? And we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And what's the other phrase? You know, doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. We will often think about things and think about things and think about things, and then we don't take action. And if there is anything I want to do when I leave this earth, is I don't want to look back and regret. So I would encourage you, as you think about making a career change, to take some of the steps or some of the things that I've shared today and use that as a way to bring yourself forward and define your fears, face your fears. And obviously, if you need to talk about any of that, you can reach out, and I'm happy to spend some time with you. So again, define your fears. That exercise and that practice from Tim is really good. Manage your mindset. Are you in a place of scarcity and worry and anxiety? Or are you in a place of thinking, you know what, it didn't work out. It didn't work out for a reason. I know the next good thing is coming. I truly believe in planning. That plan, do, check, act cycle. And then paying attention to the cost of inaction. If you don't take the step, how is that going to impact your relationships? How is it going to impact your health? How is it going to impact you financially? How is it going to impact your time? How is it going to impact your stress level? And with that, I would love to open it up to questions. And you guys could certainly take yourself off of mute if you have questions. And Todd, you may see questions pop up in the chat room if people want to stay anonymous.
Well, something that you mentioned, I know just conversation, I've been getting a lot of questions about stopgap jobs or one-off things that people can do online, whether it's translating other languages, which my wife has done. That's worked out very well during all this, and other things. So can you speak a little bit more to some of those resources for people who just need a lifeboat, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you that depending on what your skill set is and what your experience is and what you'd like to put out there is kind of stopgap. How do you bring in cash flow now because you need something? There are a number of websites, and I've got a list of those. So if anybody needs those, they're freelance websites. So there's Upwork, there's LinkedIn. You can post yourself on. There are some people who create classes and put them out on Udemy. There's lots of different things that you can do in that space. And if you're in that space of trying to figure out what is it about your background, skills, and experience that you might be able to capitalize on and utilize and then make some money from, happy to have that conversation with you as well. Most of us, it's pretty tough sometimes to think about your own background and experience and figure out how can you monetize that. But having an outside person, somebody like me, I've worked in a lot of different industries, and I started off my career writing job descriptions for managers who needed to hire staff. And so I've worked across companies that were in financial services and mining and oil and gas and consulting and telecom and tech. So if you're curious about how you can translate what you have in terms of the background and jobs into something else, or maybe even your hobbies into something, we can have that conversation and I can try to help you with that.
One other question that came in is, how about developing multiple streams of income?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who knows me in my business, I have multiple streams of income. That's incredibly important. I think putting all your eggs in one basket is tough. Now, having said that, I will say, I do think the riches are in the niches. So if you're going to start your own business or you're going to do some of these things, you do have to kind of niche down. You can't just say that you can do anything, because then people don't know how to categorize you. And to be memorable and to get hired, you do have to have a branding statement or an elevator speech that kind of helps people remember you. So you may have the capability to deliver across a wide spectrum given your skill sets and your background, but you do have to have at least an entry point and a way to talk about yourself when you're introducing yourself or putting yourself out there on these freelance platforms or other things that will get you, well, people will go, oh, you can do this for me. And then once you start building that relationship or get them as a client or a customer, then you can go from there and do more.
A really good one came in here. So how do you market your services to organizations that you have no existing connections or links with?
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about, and I got this from a lady named Liz Ryan, who is also an HR consultant here in the Denver Boulder area. You can do pain letters or talk to people about their pain. So I'll give you an example. So let's say a company is going through some major difficulty right now because of the COVID situation, right? And maybe they had started a merger and an acquisition prior to the COVID crisis, and they are now in a space of needing to lay off people, and yet they have a new product that they're rolling out, and you've got some sort of tech capability to help them out. What you do is you go to LinkedIn and you find somebody who is in the leadership chain of the organization where you have specific expertise where you can help them. And you ask for a connection to that person. And I have scripts that I give my clients to get connections. And then once you get the connection, you write a little blurb to them and you talk about the pain that you believe that they're going through and their role in that company and how you might be able to help them. And then you send that, and there's a way to craft it so you're not coming across as icky and kind of a lurker or a stalker, but a way of somebody who's there to help, right? And ideally, you want to get them on the phone, and you start going from there, and then you start with a phone conversation, right? And then you start developing a relationship. So you can do those types of things. It's just it's a multi-step process. Anything else? Any other comments or questions I can address?
I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat room, but just off the cuff here. So I have seen a huge increase in the number of organizations that are suspending matches in 401ks and other benefits, given everything that's going on. And Denise, given your vantage point and focus on comp, can you speak just a little bit about what you've been seeing from your perspective there?
Yeah, certainly there are companies taking those steps. I know when I'm in a number of groups here locally with senior HR leaders, and we talked about three tactics, right? It was pay cuts in some organizations, furlough, so putting people kind of temporarily, and then laying off, right? So three components. We are obviously getting back to a new normal, and companies are starting to pull people back into the office, and we kind of, in many cases, have a hybrid model. What I would tell you is I kind of look at this as like professional athletes who have agents, right? And they are monitoring where can they utilize their skills and what team can they go to that will maximize their pay and their opportunities for the time that they're healthy and can produce and deliver as a professional athlete. I think as employees or as entrepreneurs, you have to be thinking about yourself and managing yourself in the way of what makes me marketable today, but what's going to make me marketable tomorrow. And so, you know, if you are with an organization that maybe you saw some things through this COVID virus and experience where you're like, my senior leadership doesn't have it all figured out, and I'm really worried that they don't really have a handle on how we're going to get back to bringing in the revenue we need as an employer, and they're cutting expenses and they're still cutting expenses and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight, then you probably need to dust off that resume, that LinkedIn profile, and get yourself ready if you aren't already looking for a job, and just put yourself out there. I had a very good leader tell me once, you know, if you aren't adding something new to your resume every 6 months, you're probably not learning and growing enough. And he was also an advocate, and he told us to go look for a job, put yourself out there in the marketplace, apply, go for interviews, and see if there's something better. I don't want you on my team if you aren't really happy here. I want to see you grow and develop, and if I don't have those opportunities for you, I'm more than willing to support you in your career, even if it takes you somewhere else. So don't think of yourself as stuck. Think of yourself as a free agent, and that you can go do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And if you feel like you've had a pay cut or something and you're like, this is just ridiculous and I need more money coming in, and maybe your partner, your spouse, or somebody else in your household had a pay cut too, and you're just struggling to make ends meet, there are things like these freelance websites where you can put yourself out there to get some work in the short term, but then you got to play the long-term game, and how do you get yourself back on the right footing and get back to being employed and having a regular paycheck? Or if you're going to be an entrepreneur, how do you kind of shift and pivot to utilize your skills in a new way and market yourself to other organizations or individuals that'll need your services?
And thank you, Denise. Another question I just saw come in is, do you see diversity and inclusion as one of the major pain points for organizations?
I think that employers have different stances on that, right? I think diversity and inclusion is an incredibly good component to have as a company. I think in order to drive the right experience for customers, you have to have a variety of perspectives sitting at the table in your employee base. I am a firm believer in hiring the right qualified person to fill a position, so you don't just have diversity in your workplace for diversity's sake to check the box, but you have diversity in the workplace with qualified people so that you can make smart decisions and have a variety of perspectives when you're making decisions and discussing things. And so I think diversity and inclusion is an incredibly important priority, but done the right way. What else?
That's all this time.
Okay. Well, with that, I know we ended a little bit early, but I'm sure you all have many things to do. We've got about 12 minutes left, but I'm going to go ahead and end. Again, I'll send you guys all an email, and I know Todd will reach out to you guys too. If you guys need to chat with him, you'll have the ability to catch up with him. I'll send you the recording so you can listen to this again, or you can pass it on to friends or family or others that you think might enjoy this. And just so you know, I'm doing another free webinar on July 9th called Discover Your Career Derailing Blind Spots. So mark your calendars for that. And then I will be doing free webinars once a month throughout the end of the year. So pay attention to Eventbrite and my postings out there, as well as on social media on Facebook and LinkedIn. And you'll be able to see what I'm offering over the next few months. Take care, everybody.